What is the difference between wills and trusts?
All right. So a will is something that will catch whatever you own when you pass away, and it will dictate what happens to those assets that are in your name when you pass away, and then who is in charge of dispersing those assets to who your beneficiaries. Those are the people you are giving your assets to. It could be specific assets. It could be just this is what's called a residuary clause. Everything I own when I pass away, this is who's getting. So a will only comes into effect, or is only really comes into play when you pass away. A trust is something that is created during your lifetime, and there are many, many different types of trusts. There are revocable trusts, irrevocable trusts, trusts for people with disabilities, and many trusts, like irrevocable trusts, are meant to preserve assets for your family and designate someone to be in control of those assets during your lifetime. Okay, whatever you have decided to put into that trust. Then after a 5-year period of time, if you need any medical assistance that the government would pay for, then they can now put a lien against those assets. You're sheltering those assets and preserving them for the family. There are revocable trusts, which people also will set up, where they still can maintain control over their assets, but they're not sheltering those assets after a 5-year look-back period. They're maintaining control. They can have unique clauses in there as far as who gets what, how certain assets are managed, how long somebody can live in a house, what their obligations are. So trusts are a way to avoid having to go through a probate process, avoiding estate tax, but also there are certain benefits, okay, and so really what you need to determine is what the goal is. What is it that the person is looking to accomplish? What are their assets? So a trust, like I said, is a separate instrument that is created during the lifetime. And then once you create that trust, you can then start putting your assets into the trust, which are then going to be managed by the terms of the trust. A will is just catching your assets when you pass away.
Interesting. What happens with the person that you appointed, let's say, to manage your trust? And what happens if something happens to them?
Well, it's never really good planning just to name one trustee or one executor.
So it's always
so
multiple?
You can have co-executors and co-trustees, so they manage your estate or your trust together. Or you can have a list of alternate executors or trustees. So you can say, I am going to appoint my wife or this sibling, but if something happens, then this is the backup. Okay, and then you can have a number of backups. If you only appoint one person and that person predeceases you or is not capable of acting, being in control of your estate, now you're leaving your family to potentially fight over who is going to be the next one in line.
Speaking of fighting, have you had any recent cases that are too complicated due to the fact of the loved ones didn't do the right thing by the family?
Yes, I could think of one recently where it was the father had passed away and he didn't have a will or a trust and he owned a business. And he had a falling out with one of his sons a short time before he passed away. And then when he did pass away, his spouse, his wife, was left with the first $50,000 of the estate and then half of the remainder. And the estate was worth a lot more. So it turned out that there was little fist fights between the two brothers. Police were getting involved. The type of business that they were running required a New York State license. The brother who had been ousted by the family wasn't authorizing his mother, even though she was a partial the owner of the business, to continue to run the business, and was questioning her ability to do so. And a simple will or a trust by dad could have alleviated the need for all of that, and possibly kept the family together.